The call came in just after dawn. A middle-aged man found unresponsive in his living room. No signs of forced entry. No immediate injuries visible. Possible accidental fall. By the time the first responders arrived, the house was quiet in the way only early mornings can be. Curtains half drawn. Television off. The kind of stillness that feels normal until it doesn't. The victim lay on his back near the coffee table. One arm slightly bent. The other resting across his abdomen. His head turned to the left, cheek pressed against the rug. At first glance, nothing looked wrong. The coffee table was upright. A glass sat on it, half full of water. No broken items. No blood visible from a standing position. This was the kind of scene investigators see every week. A slip. A sudden collapse. A heart that gave out at the wrong moment. But procedures exist for a reason. The body temperature suggested death occurred several hours earlier. Rigor had begun setting in, but unevenly. The room itself was tidy, almost too tidy for a sudden fall. The lights in the living room were still off. Only daylight filtered in from the narrow gap between the curtains. It created long shadows across the carpet, softening edges, hiding contrast. Photographs were taken. Wide shots first, then mid-range, then close-ups. Nothing stood out. No visible wounds. No overturned furniture. No defensive marks on the arms or hands. The preliminary report leaned toward accidental death. Until the lights were turned on. The overhead light changed everything. Under full illumination, the carpet revealed faint discolorations that weren't visible before. Not stains exactly, more like shadows within the fibers themselves. Subtle. Directional. Closer inspection showed irregular patterns near the victim's shoulders and upper back. Not splatter. Not pooling. Transfer. Something had pressed into the carpet and then been lifted. The coffee table was examined next. Its edges were smooth, unmarked. No blood. No dents. No signs of impact. If the victim had fallen and struck his head, there should have been contact marks. There were none. Attention returned to the body. The position of the arms was calm. Too calm. In accidental falls, arms often land awkwardly. Hands clench. Fingers curl. Reflexive reactions leave chaos in small details. Here, the hands were relaxed. Fingertips clean. Nails intact. The victim's shirt showed slight wrinkling near the collar, as though it had been tugged, then smoothed back down. No tears. No buttons missing. At the back of the neck, faint redness appeared under closer examination. Not bruising. Not yet. But pressure marks can take time to surface. The room temperature was cool. The windows were closed. No fans running. Air circulation was minimal, which made the smell unusual. A faint, almost undetectable chemical odor lingered near the sofa. Not strong enough to trigger alarms. Just enough to register once someone knew to look for it. The sofa cushions were firm. Recently fluffed. The rug beneath the body was slightly misaligned with the floor tiles beneath it, shifted less than an inch to the right. Small details. Easy to dismiss. But together, they told a different story. The lighting had hidden contrast. The room's neatness had suggested order. The body's position had implied peace. But peace doesn't leave transfer marks. And accidents don't usually involve repositioning. When the forensic team returned to the scene later that morning, the approach changed. This was no longer treated as a collapse. It was treated as a scene that had been adjusted. Carefully. Deliberately. The absence of chaos wasn't reassuring anymore. It was suspicious. And the biggest problem wasn't what was present in the room. It was what should have been there, but wasn't. The second examination began with a simple rule. Assume nothing in the room was in its original position. Every object was photographed again, this time measured to the millimeter. Distances between furniture, wall edges, and floor seams were logged. The coffee table's position was compared to faint compression marks in the rug beneath it. They didn't line up. The table had been moved slightly, but intentionally. The rug, heavier and slower to shift, had recorded the table's earlier position. That meant the table hadn't been where it appeared to be when the body was found. Which meant the fall theory collapsed immediately. A fall requires an impact point. An impact point leaves damage. There was none. Attention returned to the victim's upper body. Under alternate light sources, faint abrasions became visible along the back of the neck and collarbone area. Not scratches. Not blunt force injuries. Pressure marks. The pattern suggested sustained force rather than a sudden blow. Fingers, possibly a forearm. Enough to restrict airflow without breaking skin. Manual strangulation doesn't always leave obvious bruising, especially when pressure is applied evenly and released before damage becomes dramatic. The time of death estimate was adjusted next. Core body temperature suggested the victim died earlier than initially believed, by at least 2 hours. That placed death closer to midnight, not early morning. The house, however, showed signs of activity after that window. The kitchen sink was damp. A dish sat drying on the rack. The trash bin contained a freshly tied bag. Someone had cleaned after the victim was already dead. That wasn't consistent with a sudden accident. The faint chemical odor detected earlier was identified through air sampling. It wasn't poison. It wasn't a cleaning agent either. It was fabric freshener, used heavily on soft surfaces like couches and rugs. The sofa cushions were removed. Underneath them, the fabric smelled stronger. The underside showed compression patterns inconsistent with casual sitting. Someone had knelt there. Not for long, but long enough to apply pressure. The living room lighting was tested next. With the lights off, the room concealed contrast. Shadows flattened detail. Transfer marks disappeared. Under daylight alone, the scene looked harmless. With the lights on, the truth surfaced. This wasn't accidental. It was staged to look accidental, specifically under poor lighting. The victim's phone provided the final contradiction. No activity after 11:47 p.m. No movement. No screen wake-ups. No background processes triggered. But a neighbor's security camera captured interior lights switching on and off at 1:12 a.m. Someone was inside the house. After death. Adjusting. The final test focused on the rug itself. Fiber analysis showed directional compression, fibers bent toward the sofa, not away from it. That meant the body had originally been closer to the couch, then dragged a short distance before being repositioned near the coffee table. Not far. Just enough to change the story. Dragging leaves marks even when done carefully. Rugs remember weight. The conclusion became unavoidable. The victim was killed quietly. Without a struggle. Without chaos. The scene was cleaned, corrected, and simplified. But it wasn't perfect. It relied on assumptions. That lighting wouldn't be re-examined. That neatness suggested innocence. That calm meant natural death. Those assumptions failed. The official cause of death was changed. Homicide. Cause, manual strangulation. Manner, staged accidental fall. No dramatic confession followed. No courtroom spectacle. The evidence didn't need one. It had already spoken. The scene didn't lie. It just waited to be seen.